Welcome. My name is Shannon. My pronouns are they, them. And today we have a flow and restore, meaning that the first portion will be asana, like more active asana being practiced. We'll have some half sun salutations to flow and link our breath to movement. And then we'll come down to the mat, to the bed, or we can stay on our chair. And we'll practice some prop-supported restorative asana. So as far as props go, what we might need for the beginning portion is anything that we use during our active practice. I have blocks here. I'll also demo with the chair. I'll also be demoing everything we do seated as well as standing. And if you're seated on the mat, basically follow the cues for seated on the chair. And then you can make similar movements with your legs if you choose, or you can let them rest however they want to rest. For our prop supported asana, excuse me, I have a bolster here, but you can easily use a bunch of bed pillows. 2 usually works well, but there's no such thing as too many props. I also have some blankets, so we can use those for support. We can use those to keep ourselves warm. And I'll be using my blocks as well for some support with the bolster. But if you don't have blocks, you can use more pillows, more blankets, books, anything that can offer a little bit of support. So we will get started with our grounding. So today we have a standing or seated, if we want to be in the chair or on the mat, grounding. So we're going to practice standing or seated and then move down to the mat or into bed or whatever works for you. So generally, for our groundings, we're going to find a comfortable standing position if we're going to be standing. I usually, default to Tadasana, which is a feet about hips width apart, if that's what works for us, maybe even a little bit wider. Anything that makes us feel stable. We can also stand against a wall if we like that extra support. If we're seated, we'll find a seated position that feels comfortable. We might want to make sure that we have our legs or our feet on the ground if that's helpful for us, just because it kind of helps us connect downward, which is the point of our grounding, to connect to the earth. But we can also do that through the chair itself. So once you find your comfortable position, we might take a moment to notice the sounds around us, the space around us. I live in the city, so you might hear horns, people yelling. That's okay. That's just the sounds that my environment makes. So you might hear that through your speakers, but also note the sounds that are in your space so that we don't have any surprises. And if we like, we can close our eyes or we can have a soft gaze. And we'll take a few moments to notice the breath. So we might notice our inhale and our exhale. We might notice if we feel air coming in or out through the nose or the mouth. No wrong answers. We might notice if we feel the breath coming into the heart space or the belly or both. We might begin to notice other areas of the body where we can feel the breath. Maybe we feel the ribs expand. Maybe we feel the shoulders move. And we don't have to change or alter the breath at all. But if we would like, we might see if we can bring the breath into the belly, making the diaphragm expand and contract on the exhale. And that might feel good. Or we might bring the breath in and out through the nose. And if this feels good, we can maintain this breath throughout our practice. But breathe however works for you. There's no right or wrong way. And then as we continue to breathe, we might release our awareness on the breath. We might start to notice the body in general. We might notice if there's anywhere that's a little tender or somewhere that we need to be a little bit careful with. And we'll make a note of those areas so we can be as kind to ourselves as possible today. We also might notice anywhere that wants to move or stretch. And we'll remind ourselves that we have the agency in our practice to do this anytime we need. To stop when we need, to drink when we need, to stretch or move when we need. We might begin to notice those areas making contact with the mat, the floor, the chair, the bed. And in those areas, we might let ourselves be heavy. On our exhale, maybe letting ourselves rest down against the objects. Allowing them to support us so that we can release and relax. Maybe letting go of tension of the shoulders on our exhale. Letting the arms be heavy, letting the legs be heavy. And noticing that no matter how much we kind of let go of in the body, the ground is still supporting us, our chair, our bed is still supporting us. Beautiful. We'll take a moment just to allow ourselves to be in this space, to kind of come into our practice today. And when we're ready, we might start to introduce a little bit of movement, maybe rocking from side to side or front to back. And if we haven't already, we might start to blink the eyes open. Welcome. So today, we're going to start with a few standing asana or seated asana. If that's how we want to practice. So I'm going to get folks in the chair setup and then folks who are standing. So for our postures today, we are going to hold a Tadasana-like position for the first couple. And that can be legs together, legs apart. I like nice wide legs so I can bring the belly between my legs and have space to breathe. I like to take a nice big breath once I move space from my belly and realize, oh, I really can breathe all the way down here. Great. And then for our first posture, crescent, if you're seated, you can bring your hand down to the side of the chair or the mat. When I cue folks to bring their hands down the leg, you can rest it on the side of the chair, bed, couch as well. And then we'll just follow the same cues, basically. So If we're standing, we'll find our standing Tadasana. I, again, like to go with a wider leg Tadasana. Just feel like it gives me a sturdier base. But do what works best for you. And when we're ready, we're going to start by reaching the right arm up. We're going to do the same thing if we're seated. We're going to reach up through the ribs, up through the fingertips. And as we're going up, we're going to bring the left hand either down to the chair or mat, or we're going to start to slide it down the leg, coming into a bit of a stretch. Beautiful. Then we're going to come back up, inhaling the arm up, bringing the right arm down, coming into crescent on the opposite side. And so we're going to flow back and forth, inhaling, exhaling as we hinge, inhaling up, opposite arm, exhaling as we hinge, and we'll do 2 more, inhaling up, exhaling, inhaling up, exhaling. Beautiful. This is the last one. Beautiful. And then back through center, lowering both arms down. From here, we're going to come into a posture called Dancer's Tadasana. So if we're seated, we're going to follow the cues for the upper body. And I'll give you a special cue. But if we're standing, we're finding our traditional Tadasana. On our inhale, we're going to reach the arms up, and we might interlock the fingers in any grip that feels good. If it doesn't feel good to interlace the fingers, you can bring them into cactus. And then exhale, we're going to step the right leg back at a 45-degree angle. So we're bringing that leg back. We're going to shine the heart forward. If we're seated, as we have our arms up, we might rotate the body at a 45-degree angle, sort of towards the corner of the room. And then, if we like, we can add a back bend, shining the heart open, and maybe lifting the chin. And if this doesn't feel good, we can keep the head straight as well. And we're going to take a few deep breaths here. We might notice the breath in the rib cage, in the belly. And then when we're ready, we're going to inhale the legs together and exhale the arms down. Take a moment, shake out, and I'm going to demo this one seated. So we're finding our Tadasana. On our inhale, we're reaching the arms up. Exhale, stepping the left leg back this time. If we're seated, we're going to rotate towards the left side and then offer ourselves a back bend if we like. And we'll be here for about 3 more breaths. Beautiful. When we're ready, we can rotate forward, step the legs together, and exhale the arms down. Go ahead and shake the arms out. I know it's one that when you're in posture, it doesn't seem, sometimes it really does, seem too intense. But once you bring the arms down, you're like, oh, wow. But it's a nice stretch. From here, we are going to make our way into a wide-legged forward fold. So I'll demo seated first and then standing. So if we like, we can have our second chair in front of us or blocks on the floor, or bring our legs as far apart as we're comfortable with. Again, bringing the belly between the legs to make space around the hip joint. And we'll hinge from the hips, walking our hands down. Maybe this is our forward fold today. Maybe this is our forward fold. Or maybe this is our forward fold today. And if we like, we can intend the crown of the head towards the mat. we can stay here. If we're standing, we're coming into a wide-legged Tadasana. So we're spreading our feet apart as far as we're comfortable with. Our toes might be facing forward. If that feels tight on the ankles, you can let them kind of roll out a little bit. We're going to ground down through the feet. And the same thing, we're going to find that hip joint, begin to fold. Can walk our hands down our legs to a chair, to blocks. If we like, we can stay here, or we can bring the hands down to the mat or intend the crown of the head towards the ground. Continuing to breathe here. I sometimes will come down to my forearms on my blocks. It gives me a little bit of a triangle base, it feels like. Ready to exit. We can bring a soft bend into the knees. We'll place the hands on the thighs and press up. Same if we're seated, we're just walking the hands back up. And then we'll step the feet together. Take a moment and shake out. From here, we're going to come through our half sun salutation. So if we like, we can use blocks. We can use a chair, table, or bench for support. If we're seated, again, I am going to recommend a wider seated position so that when we fold forward, we have space for our bellies. But we're going to follow the exact same cues for the upper body as we do standing. So once you find your comfortable position, you can stay here. Remember, blocks or a table in front of us might be helpful for those folds. If we're standing, I'm going to demo with this today. Again, because we're going to be folding, I like a wider Tadasana because I still need space for my belly. So we're going to ground down through the feet. Might make a moment, make sure we're not locking the knees. We want a little bend there. Find a nice long spine. Might roll the shoulders up and back. Our gaze is forward. And then when we're ready we'll take 2 breaths here. And on our inhale, we'll reach the arms up for upward salute. Our palms will be facing each other. Shoulders, we'll make sure kind of pulled away from the ears. Beautiful. And on our exhale, we're going to hinge at the hips, bringing our hands down to our chair, our blocks, or the mat in front of us for our forward fold. On our inhale, we're going to come halfway up for half fold. So we might have a long spine from the sit bones to the top of the head. We can look down or we can look forward. Then when we're ready, we'll come back into our forward fold. So reaching back down, bending the knees. And on an inhale, we're going to come up for upward salute. And then exhale, hands to your heart center and to the sides. So now that we've found all the postures in our body, we're going to see if we can go a little bit faster. So although I'm cueing breath, if it does not feel comfortable for you to inhale up and exhale down, that's okay. Breathe however you need to breathe. Most important thing is that we're breathing. So finding our Tadasana, inhaling up, exhaling fold. Inhaling half fold. Exhale, fold. Bending the knees, inhaling up. Exhaling, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Inhale up. Hands to your heart center. and back to Tadasana. Beautiful. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Inhale up. Hands to your heart center and to the sides. Beautiful. We're going to do 2 more. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Inhale up. Hands to your heart center and to the sides. Last one. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Inhale up. Hands to your heart center and to the sides. Beautiful. There is our half sun salutation practice. Now we're going to set up for our restorative postures. We will be practicing a seated cat-cow once we come down, just to help our bodies decompress a little bit. If you like, you can be seated on a bolster. I'm going to stay on the chair for this one. You can also be seated directly on the mat, whatever works best for you. You can be in bed. If we're on the mat or in bed, we can have our legs in any position that feels comfortable. Maybe cross-legged if that feels good for us, or we can sit in butterfly, feet together, knees apart. If we're seated, we just want to make sure that our feet are comfortably on something solid like the ground. I like to start with my hands on my lap. And we're going to start with our cow. So for our cow, we're going to roll the shoulders back, shine the heart forward, maybe gaze up. Inhale. Exhale, round the spine. Chin to chest. Beautiful. Inhale, cow, shining the heart forward. Exhale, cat, rounding the spine. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. And we'll do one more. And then find our way back to neutral. Beautiful. So for our first restorative posture, we'll be coming into a supported fold. And this is a one-legged fold. So I'm going to offer a variation in the chair first, and then I'll demo on the mat. So for this variation, we have a few different options. If we have our second chair in front of us or a table, we can use that, or we can use our bolster in front of us. But because we're going to be doing this one-legged, we also have the option of using a block or maybe a pillow, bolster, resting the edge of the foot. I'm going to start with the left leg, but you can do either because we're going to do both. Resting the edge of the foot on the block or books or whatever it is. And then just taking a wider position with the opposite leg. If you like, and you have the balance, you can rest the heel down and lift the toes. But I prefer a flat foot, just makes me feel a little bit more stable. Just I'm going to grab my bolster really quick. There we go. And then whatever object we have in front of us, we're going to hinge at the hips and slowly rest the head against the object or against our arms on the object, whatever feels comfortable. And then we'll stay here. If at any point this feels like really intense, we can move the block a little bit closer. We can place the foot down, or we can bring the foot to the floor. Anything that feels good here. Now, if we're on the mat, we have a few options. Gonna grab my other bolster here, or my other block here. So for this, I'm going to have my left leg folded in front of me, like we're in butterfly, but only with one leg. I'm going to bring my blocks on either side of my outstretched leg. This is one option where we hinge forward, resting our arms down. But my favorite is creating this little table out of my props so that I can rest forward like this, or we can have the bolster upright, or we can stack our blocks, or have a table in front of us or a chair in front of us as we hinge forward, resting against our object. Oh, this is the one for me today. But find whatever variation feels best in your body today. This is one that also we can do facing a couch. Generally, if we can fold one leg in, and if it doesn't feel comfortable, stretch them both out. Go for a wide-legged fold. It's cool. Do whatever feels good. And we'll be here for the next about 4 or 5 minutes. And remember, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Mackenzie. We might take a moment to notice the breath, the inhale and the exhale. We'll slowly begin to press up, walking our hands against the body or against the props. We're going to go ahead and switch sides. So we'll extend our left leg, bring the right leg in. So we might need to move our props over. Take a moment and go ahead and do that. Thank you. And remember, we don't have to come into the exact same variation on this side that we do on the opposite side. Our bodies are asymmetric in mobility, and we can honor that by doing whatever we need on the opposite side of the body. Thank you, Heather. And then when we're ready, we'll come into our fold. So again, noticing the hip joint, folding from the hip joint, and resting downward. And as we come into our position, we might again notice those areas of the body making contact with the mat, with the floor, the chair, the bed. And let ourselves be heavy. Let ourselves rest against the support that the earth provides. Today's practice was planned around the idea of solidarity. It was May Day this week. And the idea that we're all practicing together in whatever ways we need is something that I always love. It's why I teach the way that I teach. And I wish so much that all workplaces, all places of learning, all offered us the ability to contribute in the ways that serve our bodies, serve our minds. And I hope that you're able to find a variation of this posture that serves you. We'll be here for another couple minutes. And if it's not serving you, adjust. You can find whatever else you need. And if you need help, just type it in the chat. And when we're ready, we'll come back to the breath. Noticing the inhale and exhale. We can slowly begin to press up again. Maybe stretch out both legs. And we'll set up for our next posture, which is a supported spinal twist. If you're in the chair, go ahead, get comfy. I'll be with you in just a moment. If you're on the mat, we have a couple options. So remember, we can always have our blankets around us if we're cold or chilly. So you might want to have those handy if you'd like to cover yourself. I always recommend covering the lower half of the body and pulling it up. But for a spinal twist, sometimes it's easier to wrap the blanket around like a cape, and then that way we can kind of position it, depending on whether you want the lower body or the upper body to be covered. So for our spinal twist, one option is to bring our bolster or pillows directly down to the mat, lengthwise, right next to our hip. Doesn't matter which side, we're going to do both sides. We'll be folding, twisting and folding. So for me, this isn't horribly accessible, but this might be accessible for you. So if it's accessible for you, great. If not, I'm going to create a ramp with my props. So I have one block in the highest position, one in the lowest position, and I'm going to rest my bolster against that. Now, if we have pillows, we can stack a couple pillows up going across at the top and then rest our other pillows against it, creating the same shape. We can stack blankets. We can make a huge mound. Anything that works for us here. And then when we're ready, whether the bolster is in our ramp or against the mat, we'll bring our hand closest, the bolster, behind it. And again, we have our blanket wrapped around us if we like. And then we're going to come onto our side. Now for me, I like to pull the belly up over the leg because it allows me to twist. Everybody's weight is distributed differently. So if this doesn't work for you, that's okay. You might want to pull the belly up onto the leg or in the opposite direction. But this is what works for me. And then I'm going to intend the heart space towards the pillow or bolster. Or I might come onto my side and then intend this front shoulder forward. Whatever works best. And then we'll hinge forward, resting our head. If we have a bit of space like I do, we might grab one of our blankets, fold it, and use it as a pillow. Or we might have a little throw pillow if we can grab one. Our legs can be in this kind of staggered position, or they can be stacked, whatever feels most comfortable. Mackenzie, sounds of breathing with your dog snoring. That sounds wonderful. So this might be where we are if we're on the mat or a bed. If you need any adjustments, go ahead, type in the chat, and I'll be with you in a moment. Now, if we're seated in our chair, excuse me, we can grab a pillow, bolster, blanket if we like. And this kind of also depends on the chair that we're in. But for me, I generally like to bring the legs to the side of the chair, if I can, or as close to it as I can, angling them. If there's an arm in the way, angle them so they're near the arm. And then rotate the upper body and lean back against the back of the chair, the back of the couch, the whatever it is. And again, I sometimes will pull my belly up and over just to make space. And then if I need support for my arm, I can grab my pillow or bolster so it's not just kind of dangling. The other hand can go on the leg, on the arm. I like to also sometimes tuck it under the belly to hold it in place. all the advantages of having a nice apron belly. And once we find our position again, we'll come back to the breath, noticing that inhale and exhale. Letting ourselves be heavy against the support of the bolster, of the chair, of the bed, the wall. We'll be here for another 2 minutes or so. Beautiful. We'll come back to the breath. If we are on the mat, we can press our hands into either the mat on either side and gently begin to press up to seated. If we're in our chair, we can gently begin to twist back, come upright. On the mat, now we can flip to the opposite side, or if that's not comfortable, we can set up the mat, the exact same props on the opposite side of the mat, whatever works best. Same with our chair, we can stand up and reposition ourselves, or we can scoot, whatever feels comfy. But we'll give ourselves a moment to set ourselves up. And then when we're ready, we'll again, on the opposite side now, place the hand behind the bolster, adjust our body however we need to be comfortable as we bring the heart space in the direction of the bolster. Doesn't mean it has to be on the bolster, but in the direction. And if we're in our chair, we'll again twist, rotating out, and then resting back against the back of our object. And we might take a few deep breaths here. On our exhale again, really resting against the support that's provided for us by the props, by the objects that we're using. Allowing ourselves to be held. Allowing ourselves to be supported. in these ways that we always deserve to be supported. And we'll find our breath. If we notice the mind wandering, that's okay. If we want to bring it back, we can always bring our attention back to the breath to help us stay in the present. We'll be here for another 2 minutes or so. And we'll slowly return to the breath, noticing the inhale and exhale. We can slowly begin to press up, coming up off the bolster, and find our way into a comfortable seated position so we can set up for our final resting position. If we're seated, we'll untwist, come upright. So we have a couple of options for our final position. We can come into Shavasana, which would be lying on the mat, directly on the mat or the bed, maybe with a bolster or a pillow or a rolled blanket under the knees. But we can also come into Baddha Konasana, reclined Baddha Konasana. Now we can have the bolster directly against the mat, just like we did, or we can have it on this ramp. But instead of our side against the bolster, our bum will come right up against the base and we'll recline back on the bolster. And we'll bring the soles of the feet together, knees apart. Something that I find really helpful is to take a blanket and roll the blanket and place it under the knees. In Baddha Konasana, but we can also use this in Shavasana. So it helps support the sides of the knees or under the knees if we're in Shavasana. I also like this for our seated variation around the neck, so we have that support as we lean back. If we want to practice Baddha Konasana in our chair, we can rest the feet on the sides of the foot. We can lift that by placing our bolster beneath us, or if we have a chair in front of us, we can rest the legs up on the chair, feet together, knees apart, covering the lower half of the body with our blanket. And if we're on the mat, let me show you what that looks like. Again, we might have our blanket under the knees. We can wrap another blanket around our feet to keep them together if we like. and recline back. Our arms can come out to our sides. They can be against the body. Anything that feels good. So once you've decided what posture you'd like for our final resting position, you can go ahead and make yourself as comfortable as possible. And we do have a guided meditation today. So once we've found our position, we might take a few deep breaths. We might allow our eyes to close or soften, but only if that feels like it's safe in this moment. Maybe we take one hand rested on the belly, one hand on the heart. Again, only if that feels comfortable. And as we begin to take slow, steady breath, we might know that we are breathing alongside millions. Workers, dreamers, organizers, caregivers. On our exhale, perhaps we allow ourselves to fully release the myth of isolation. Not that we don't feel isolated, we often do. But the idea that the things that we achieve together. The things that we work for, concepts like equity, we achieve those together. With the next inhale, we might call to mind those who fought before us. And with the exhale, offer breath to those who continue the work now. Breathing together, we might hold these words. I breathe with the memory of those who fought for justice. I breathe for those still fighting. I breathe strength into the future we are building together. Maybe we feel ourselves woven into a lineage, stronger together, softer together. We might notice the breath in the back body, the ribs, pressing into the mat, the wall, the props. And as we breathe, perhaps we sense the unseen support of all who move with us, known and unknown. We are not alone. We are not small. We are part of something that remembers and reaches forward. We'll spend the next few moments in this space, noticing the connections to those around us, to those who fight with us, to those who breathe with us. If we're comfortable where we are, we of course can stay here as long as we want. And whenever it does feel right, we can allow the breath to bring us gently back to this moment, carrying that collective strength with us. We might be in our beds ready for rest. If so, that's wonderful. But if we'd rather, we might start to bring a bit of movement into the body. Maybe through the fingers, the toes, the head, neck. We might take any movement that feels comfortable, any movement we feel like we need or want. And whenever we're ready, again, only if we want, on our own time, we might gently roll onto the right or left side and slowly begin to press up to a seated position. If we like, we might bring the hands to heart center or place them anywhere against the body that feels good. And we'll take 3 breaths together in a way that feels comfortable for us. You might take a moment to thank ourselves for making space for movement and rest today. And I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your practice with me. It means so much. And I hope in this coming week you are able to be supported in all the ways that you need and you deserve to be supported. And I hope to see you next week.